What's up, guys? Notorious here, and today I'm going to be presenting you guys a little bit of team deathmatch on evac. Let's get this started now. Breaking news: Calvin Johnson is thinking about retirement. It's all over the websites. I just got this news. Ari just called me earlier, and he just said Calvin Johnson, something's wrong with him. He might be thinking about retirement early. He's only 30 years old and already thinking about retirement. I was kind of shocked, but at the same time, the Lions kind of know what's happening before in the past. With Barry Sanders retiring at age 30, I think 30 as well. He's only played in this NFL for 10 years, but those were stellar 10 years. But he retired too early in his prime, and Calvin Johnson might be going on that road too because, at first Barry Sanders said he was, I guess getting tired of beat up, but a couple years later he kind of admitted that the Lions were losing too much, and he's tired of losing culture that they instill on each other, and they're still losing too. They just they had a pretty bad season, to say the least. And Jim Caldwell's future is up in arms. We don't know yet until the general manager gets hired and see if he still wants Caldwell as his head coach, which I don't even know who the general manager is. So we shall see in coming days or weeks whenever they hire a general manager. So yeah, but he just, I think, released a statement today about his future, and I quote, "Like many players at this stage of their career, I am currently evaluating options for my future. I would expect to have a decision regarding this matter in the not-so-distant future." So, I don't know, Lions fans, that sounds kind of bad. I think he actually might retire, to be honest with you. I don't want him to retire. No, I don't think anybody, any NFL fan or any players in the NFL want him to retire this early, This is a amazing player. I can go all the stats with him. Most receiving yards in the single season. He almost broke the 2,000 yard mark for receiving. He broke Jerry Rice's record, so that's something. He's probably a future first ballot Hall of Famer. I don't know. I think he is in my book, but in the Hall of Fame committee, I'm not sure because they haven't been nice to receivers, because the only two people that ever been inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame on their first try are Jerry Rice and Steve Largent. So it's gonna be hard, but I think he can. If you break Jerry Rice's single season record, just go through his accolades: 6 Pro Bowls, 4 All-Pros, 2-time NFL receiving yards leader, and 10,000 receiving clubs. I think the fastest receiver to reach 10,000 yards. So that's pretty impressive. And 83 touchdowns. That's really good. It'd be disappointing, that if he retires this early. But he has been going through injuries. He has been beat up for a little bit, for a while, and the team hasn't been performing well anyways. So it's been like that for a while. He got drafted in 2007, and the next year he goes 0-16. Man, that just kills you when you go 0-16. No NFL team has ever done that in the history of football. So that's really bad. And last season they were doing really good. They went 11-5. And let me see his stats from last year. I think last year he had 8 touchdowns, 1,000-yard receiving season. It was okay. It wasn't too bad. And they made the playoffs. With Golden Tate's help. They propelled themselves into a playoff spot. So that's pretty impressive, and I don't know. In my opinion, I might be thinking he's going to retire. I think the way this team is right now, they haven't been performing well during his tenure and with the Lions. I think he's only been in the playoffs like twice and lost both games, so he hasn't won a playoff game yet in his career. And he's been having to go through a lot of head coaches, from I think Rod Marinelli with the 0-16 Lions to Jim Schwartz to now Jim Caldwell, to, if he still stays, maybe a potential new head coach. So that'd be 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 coaches he will be going through. And maybe, I don't know how many offensive coordinators he's been through. They just fired Joe Lombardi earlier in the season, so he's been through a lot of coaching changes, and that's not good for continuity for your quarterback. Maybe not for Calvin Johnson, because he's still been performing like a beast. Maybe for Matt Stafford, it can affect him as well if Matt Stafford keeps having to learn a different system every single year, every couple years. You want to stay. You want to be continuous, and you want to be consistent, like Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. So yeah, but let's see. See what else. Anything special? Barry Sanders. I think we all know about his story. Retiring too early, and learning later on that the Lions have a losing culture. They do have a losing culture. They haven't won a playoff game, I think, since 1999 or something like that. It's been a while they haven't won a playoff game, and Calvin Johnson. This would be sad news for everyone in the NFL if in a couple days he does announce his retirement. But if he does, he'll go down as one of the greatest receivers to ever play this game, in my opinion. And he'll be like Barry Sanders. We'll know him as the guy that retired too early in his prime. And I wouldn't be disappointed. It's like Patrick Willis with the 49ers. That one was actually surprising. I didn't think Patrick Willis was going to retire at age 30, but he had a toe injury, but I think a part of the reason he retired was because the 49ers were having problems with Jim Harbaugh. I think that's part of the reason. That's just me, but you're going to have to talk to Patrick yourself if you want to know what really happened in his retirement. He was injured. He had a toe injury. That's why he was out for the majority of his last season in the NFL. So, yeah, but ooh, man, he signed an 8-year, $132 million contract. That I think they're not going to trade him. If he's asking for a trade to a good team, maybe the Patriots or the Panthers, because the Panthers could really use him. Cam and Calvin, man, that'd be a great combination in my opinion. But but any of those good teams, I think if he asked for a trade, I think the Lions would deny his trade. Really, even if they don't have to deal with his salary cap anymore, but they kind of want him, just like Barry Sanders. Kind of the reason why he had to retire is because I think Bobby Ross was his head coach, and I forgot. I think that was his head coach, but they wouldn't trade him. They wouldn't trade Sanders to anywhere, and he was just forced to retire. It's either you play for us or you don't play football at all, and Barry Sanders chose not to play football at all. And that might be Calvin Johnson's case. This is deja vu all over again. So, this is just a quick update about Calvin Johnson. Based on these statements and, this news coming out, I think he's going to retire. It's sad to say that, but I hope he doesn't retire. I hope he's proving me wrong. I hope he stays for another season. But I think I don't think he's going to go anywhere else in the NFL. He's not going to get traded or anything. So it's going to be the same situation. You either play for the Lions or you don't play at all. So if he retires, Calvin, thanks for all the good memories. You're an awesome player, one of the greatest of all time, and we'll miss you if you do retire. So, yeah, but I think that's everything, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below about Calvin Johnson's retirement, if he is retiring. We don't know yet, but I'll put some links in the description of some articles that I found and some breaking news, anything special. So, yeah, but I'll catch you guys up another time. See ya.